So these all go a long way to supporting the pollinators, well, the populations of pollinators. Populations of pollinators, say that 10 times fast. Populations of pollinators. Welcome to today's Natural Gardening Live with me, Josie Rainbird, your natural gardening coach. Today we're talking about pollinator-friendly plants that you can sow now with no issues, inside and outside, and they will be ready for planting out in late spring to feed your pollinators. I've got a few tips at the end as well, that things that you can do now to support the pollinators. Wait. So there are an awful lot of flowers that you can grow in your garden, regardless of the area or type of garden you've got, that will support pollinators. They have different ways that they attract pollinators, which we'll go into a bit later on. But today I'm going to be talking to you about some easy places to start. Seeds to sow, plants to grow, how to grow them, things a good place for you to start now. If you haven't started supporting pollinators in your garden or planting flowers that will attract more pollinators into your garden, this is going to be a really good place for you to start. So, growing things inside. So you can do this in your greenhouse, or you can do this on the windowsill in the kitchen or in the lounge, wherever your windows are. It's fine. You've got a big windowsill somewhere, you can do this here. You can sow half hardy annual seeds inside, ready for planting out in May and June. Perfect, absolutely perfect. You're going to get the colder spring weather out of the way, and you can plant them out nicely. They'll have grown strong enough to plant out in May time, ready for them to flower for when all the pollinators are out in force. What you want. That is perfect timing. So you can start with things like asters, cosmos, petunias and salvias. All very easy plants to sow and grow. Very reliable germinators. And as I say, you can sow these in a greenhouse, a heated propagator. If you've got a sunny windowsill, you can grow them there. They'll be fine for planting out in May and June, which is the time you want to be planting them out, which is perfect. I'll be talking through a bit later about things that you can do earlier than that, just to bridge the gap a little bit. Nasty weather this time of year. It's a bit colder. Outside at the moment it's miserable, wet and windy, and you'd think nothing would want to grow out there at the moment, but if you looked outside you can see there's a bit of spring movement going on, so it's not that bad. You can direct sow hardy annual seeds this time of year, absolutely fine. Sow them straight out into the flower beds and borders, into containers outside, so they're perfectly happy to be planted out and sown out now. So you can sow plants like Clarkia, sunflowers, poppies and cornflowers, and these are all absolutely spot on for pollinators. I'm going to say propagators. No, pollinators. I know what I mean. And they'll be totally safe to be sown outside without any weather protection needed at all. You can sow pollinator-friendly wildflower mixes, which is a really good way of creating a pollinator-friendly flower bed without having to plan your planting. You can just buy the mix and then broadcast sow the seeds outside, and then let them grow. And they'll be absolutely fine. So you can do that this time of year as well, which is really nice. Now, one thing I will say, there are lots of different pollinator-friendly mixes on the market. Some that go more towards butterflies, and some that go more towards just the bee family. So, yeah, if you want to mix it up a bit, have a look, have a little research and see which ones you fancy going for. Quite a lot of mixes just go generally as a general pollinator mix, but just have a look and see, because there is a variety of different ones on the market, and they all do a very good job of growing. So, whatever you fancy. But that's really good because you don't have to plan your planting. It's just easy. You just clear a patch of ground in a sunny position is usually very good. But again, look on the packets because some of them thrive in shady patches. So yeah, check the packets, see which ones suit your situation. But yes, so you don't have to plan the planting, which is amazing. You can sow sweet peas now outside with no problems at all. So I know I said to you about the sowing vegetable peas. So you can do those like sugar snaps or garden peas or anything like that. But you can also, people don't realise that sweet peas are actually quite hardy. So you can sow them directly out into the ground now, sort of March time, and they'll be absolutely fine. They'll grow strong plants because they've been challenged early, and they will get their roots into the ground rather than, you can start them in the greenhouse or in a propagator. Absolutely fine. That's what I've done because I started mine in December. I put them in the greenhouse and then I'm going to plant them out in the next few weeks. Fine. They'll be absolutely fine. They are totally, I would say totally, depending on where you are in the UK. I think if you're up in Scotland, they might struggle a touch because you get more colder weather than we do down south. But they are really cold hardy plants. They are a lot stronger than we make out, and they'll handle it. So you can sow those outside now, or if you're like me and you start in December, the plants should be big enough that in the next few weeks you should be able to plant them outside and then set your wigwam up ready for your displays. And a good growing tip for that, which I said about peas the other day, is when you're planting your peas, Mark them with a bamboo cane, because this will, one, so you don't forget where you planted them, because you can't see them until they start growing. Seems obvious, shouldn't have to say it, but you do. Mark them with a bamboo cane, and this will also provide the first support as well. So when they start to grow and they start to climb, the bamboo cane will be there for them to trail them up. So then that will help them then move on to like the wigwam or the support that you've got set up for them. So yeah, mark them with a bamboo cane. You don't forget where they are then either. It's a good tip. Because this is something that you don't really think about very often, and it's good to know as a general rule of thumb. A good tip when looking at flowers is double flowers are very difficult for pollinators to feed or visit, if you like. They're trying to get the nectar out. It's very difficult for them to find the nectar. So make it easy for them. If you want to attract them into the garden, make it easy for them. Give them flat, open flowers or even trumpet flowers. These are much easier for them to visit than it is like a double fluffy like rose, or you know what I mean. Lots and lots of petals involved. They've got to work to get to the bottom, to get to the nectar and get to the pollen. So yeah, if you want to start attracting them, make it as easy as possible and go for the flat or the trumpet type, like foxgloves or daffodils, things like that. It's really open and easy for them to feed on. Different types of flowers will also attract different types of pollinators. So the flat, open flowers will attract bumblebees and the bigger insects to pollinate. And then the trumpets and the smaller flowers that the bee will have to climb inside to get to the nectar and the pollen, they'll go for the smaller insects, hoverflies. Even some butterflies will go in, but they prefer the flatter one. Bees and things like that. So having a mixture of both types growing in your garden will give you a better chance of attracting a more variety of pollinators as well. So yeah, variety, as we say, is the spice of life. So get lots of different types of pollinator flowers. But yeah, try and keep them to the simple ones, if you not the double petals or the whatever they call it. Petunias are the funny ones as well. The really simple petunias are so popular with bees, but the big, what they call sphineas, the big frilly, fluffy ones that fill out and look beautiful, bees can't get into. They just can't. They don't do. What else can you do to help pollinators in your garden now? Allow your lawn weeds, your lawn weed, not your grass, allow your lawn weeds to flower. So don't mow your lawn so often and allow them to flower, because things like dandelions and daisies are early sources of nectar for bees. But when they start to emerge, they need food sources. So we've got the gorse out already, which is really nice up on the downs. We saw that the other day. And there are some, we've got like crocuses and we've got the cyclamen, we've got snowdrops that are out now. Early sources of nectar, which is crucial because when they do emerge, they do need as much help as they can get, because you know there isn't a lot going for them otherwise. It's cold and nasty out there. So by letting the weeds in your lawns grow, you're just helping them out. So that's good. That's a good one. Providing water for pollinators. Now, I don't mean a bird bath and I don't mean a bucket of water. You want something very shallow with possibly a few stones in there as well. Things that they can land in, they're not going to drown, and they can climb out if they get stuck. So just like a tray or a shallow saucer or dish with some pebbles in, and then just fill it with fresh water, and then it's there for them when they need it. Because a lot of things this time of year, they're either frozen over or they get dirty water in them, which, okay, nature can kind of filter that a little bit, but if you can give them fresh water, then all the better. But yeah, provide them, the pollinators, with fresh water. It's always a good one. And wildlife as well, not just the pollinators, but this goes for wildlife. If you've got a bird bath or a bucket of water in the garden, you'll get visitors. You will. It seems a bit silly saying it in this group, but I'm going to say it because it's an obvious one. Because I can. Avoid using pesticides. Avoid using pesticides wherever you can, and never spray open flowers. Now, if you're in this group and you aren't on the bandwagon of natural gardening, it's okay. You'll get there. It's fine. You'll come on board, I promise. But yes, if you do use pesticides in your garden, don't spray open flowers. One, it kills the flowers. They'll close up quite quickly after you spray them. They won't like it. So don't spray open flowers. And two, when the pollinators land on the flowers to like feed and pollinate, whatever, and rest, they'll get got by the pesticide, which isn't so good. As I said, it shouldn't need saying, but I'm saying it because it's a good one. Provide nesting sites for the wild bees and the insects and the pollinators in your garden. So like, as I said, like bee hotels, piles of stones and pebbles in the garden, and piles of logs and sticks, just bundled together. If you've got lots of leaves falling in your garden, you've got a pile of leaves somewhere in your garden, that will be a perfect home for all sorts of different insects. There'll be a whole metropolis growing in there. They'll love it. So yes, things like that. So simple and so easy. You can just pick some stones up from the beach, or if you walk somewhere in the countryside, pick some sticks up, pick some leaves up, things like that, and just make little piles in your garden, and it'll make such a difference. Just creating little homes for them. It just gives them a little shelter. It provides a bit of food for them as well. So that's a really good way of supporting pollinators, insects in general, wildlife in general, really, in your garden now. So these all go a long way to supporting the pollinators and, well, the populations of pollinators. Populations of pollinators, say that 10 times fast. Populations of pollinators and insects living in your garden, helping them to support the health of your garden as well. Because we all know the pollinators, they do provide a good service at pest control, at completing the life cycle of your plants as well, because the pollination helps them produce fruit, helps them produce seed to restart the life cycle again. So these have a very important role in our garden, and by us supporting them, they will support us. So it is quite important that we feed them and look after them now, because then they'll breed in our garden, and then they'll come back, and then they'll look after our garden for us. So it saves us time and effort. Do you know in the comments if you do anything to the garden to help support pollinators, if you've got any bee hotels, any flowers that you've specifically, or areas of your garden that specifically grow for pollinators, for the wildlife, anything like that. If you've got anything that you do to support them, leave it in the comments and let me know. Hopefully you'll find that useful, and we are in a good time of year to get started, so now is the time. Happy pollinator supporting time, and I'll catch you all later.